Boston College gave FSU a run for their money last season. It was a game that came down to the wire, and a lot of that was due to an explosive performance by their quarterback, Thomas Castellanos, and by extension, their offense as a whole. They had the second highest yards per play against the Noles on the whole season, second only to eventual Heisman winner Jayden Daniels. So what did they do that put FSU in a tough situation, and why weren't other teams able to replicate it down the road? Well, to start with this conversation, we need to take a step back and look at the blackboard. Let's take a look at the typical FSU defense against a standard 11 personnel set. If we look at the box, you see that the offense has 6 blockers, which means the defense needs a hat for a hat and 1 extra to account for the running back. In your traditional 4-3 defense, that would usually be this outside linebacker. However, more and more teams are trying to get extra speed on the field, so they end up replacing that backer with a 5th or nickel defensive back. That means the +1 needs to come from somewhere else, and most commonly, that place is from the safeties. If they have a true thumper, they'll often give him his own gap and allow him to come hard downhill. But more commonly, teams try to spill the running backs by having their ends keep inside on run fits, which forces the back to bounce outside and gives time for secondary players to come down and make the tackle. Now let's see what happens if we move one of these receivers to the other side. These 3x1 sets are famously some of the most difficult to defend in football, and one big reason for that is because this outside linebacker is usually now forced even further from the box. Usually teams, FSU included, have to answer this by making this backside safety even more involved in the run game. If a team can't reliably spill with their defensive ends, then he often has to take this B gap in the run game and fill from depth. That's why it's so important to have safeties in the modern game who are comfortable tackling in space. But let's take a look at what happens when the offense gets even bolder and shifts another receiver over. These families of 4x0 sets are often just referred to as quad formations. And my question for you is, how does a defense adapt to this? Before you answer that, consider this. One of these receivers has to be ineligible in order for the offense to have a full 7 on the line of scrimmage. But you can't fully ignore them, because they can still receive a backwards pass or count as another number for blocking in the screen game. I'll give you a second to think how you would defend this. So your first instinct might be to have this corner follow the extra receiver over. After all, if they're in man coverage, it would only track that they stay with their man. Plus, there are no eligible receivers on that side of the field anymore, and your corner's your best coverage guy, so you don't want to put him to waste. It also means that this backside safety keeps the same role in the run game from the trip set. This is definitely possible and something that teams often do, but there are some trade-offs here. The big one is now that you have 2 outside corners on the same side of the field, that kind of means that you either need to always play man, or you need to teach your outside corner how to play like a nickel for zone and match schemes in the rare case that a team presents in quads. This would limit your possibilities, and it would mean that a team could reliably force you into certain coverages with these formations. So what does FSU do instead? Well, they kind of just keep shifting their shell towards the strong side. This gives them tons of flexibility when they face these sets in terms of coverage. Take the Duke game for instance. Duke came out in quads a few times, and you can see that FSU's backside corner kind of takes the safety spot. The safety rolls to the other side, and the other safety rolls down into almost a nickel position. After the snap, you can see them form the box that's typical of cover 4 coverage, which limits Duke to taking an underneath route for a small gain. Later in the game, they have the ability to line up the same way, but instead of zone, they bring one safety on a blitz and play man coverage behind it, which results in a big interception. So shifting your secondary allows for more flexible coverage options. What's the downside? Remember how I said that this safety is usually responsible for a run gap against trips? Well, now you've replaced him with what's typically the worst tackler on the field, the outside corner. Let's see how that plays out against Boston College. Here you can see a quad set, and FSU has adjusted to it like they did before. The corner shifted up, one safety shifted over, and the other safety shifted down. Instead of throwing against this look, Boston College wanted to run into it, and they had a clever way of doing it. This is what I'd call back away counter. Essentially, they're running counter to the bottom of the screen, but instead of the quarterback reading to determine if he'll pull it and run, he switches roles with the back. The quarterback is now the primary option here, and the back is the constraint. His action outside pulls the attention of the defensive end and this backer, but they're hardly necessary. Right now, Boston College has 5 blockers for 5 defenders on this side of the ball. Even if this linebacker correctly reads this, he's probably getting blocked by this double team working up to the second level. So if we assume a hat for a hat, at best, FSU's looking at this corner now having to fill this gap and tackle this electric quarterback in space. Unfortunately, he's not helped out since I'm pretty sure this end is supposed to attack the puller's inside shoulder to make the ball bounce, and this backer should attack this gap, but the point remains. Boston College was able to get a weaker tackler one-on-one in space with their best ball carrier. You can see them go back to this well later in the game. Here are similar formations for both teams, just compressed a bit because of the proximity to the goal line. This is a high importance play, and if Boston College wants to win this game, they need to convert this 4th down. So what do they turn to? Well, the exact play that netted them a big gain earlier. This running back's motion pulls the attention of this end and backer, which means they can essentially get an Oklahoma drill with their quarterback on a quarter out in space, and he wins again. Ultimately, Boston College averaged over 13 yards per play with a touchdown on their 4 plays running out of this set. And that makes you think, if quads is such a good strategy against FSU, why didn't more teams try to exploit it? Well, the answer is they kind of did. In total, quad sets were run against FSU 29 times on the season, with virtually every team taking their shot on it at some point in their game. But in all of those attempts outside of Boston College, FSU didn't give up a single touchdown or even a single play over the 13 yards it averaged against Boston College. In total, they gave up only 2.77 yards per play for the rest of the season on these formations. So what did FSU do differently to fix the issue? Spend a second on the blackboard to try to see how you would fix the glaring hole of this run gap having to be filled by the corner. Some of y'all might have some pretty creative ideas, and I'd love to hear about them in the comments below. But FSU's answer to this was nothing. That's right, they saw this happen in front of their eyes in the Boston College game at the beginning of the year, and they changed absolutely nothing. And it worked. See, here's the deal. It doesn't matter who your +1 is, or even if you have a +1, if your defensive line can close up gaps like this. The corner who seemed like such a liability before really only had the opportunity to make a tackle once for the rest of the season. And you can see that that wasn't exactly for a reason the offense would be stoked about. And actually something is kind of funny that I saw when I was watching through the film. Miami tried running this formation several times, and I don't think they fully understand why they were running it, as they kept running to the side of the ball where they didn't have the numbers advantage. But I digress. FSU was able to have flexibility with their defense and their secondary because they could literally steal numbers away from the run game because they trust their defensive line to win with the numbers disadvantage. And for every game except for one, that strategy worked. They lose a lot on this line, but there's still reason for optimism. Jackson and Farmer should be about as good of an interior defensive line as you'll see in the country. And if Marvin Jones Jr. and Pat Payton live up to their talent, this could be another dominant year for FSU's defense. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm preparing a couple videos on DJU, so make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss out on those. If you want to see more of my work, check me out. I'm doing a series of videos over on Noles 247 channel, and a lot of my other work is featured on Noles 247 site. So like and subscribe there, and subscribe over on the Noles 247, and I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching.